Want to know what your dog is thinking?
Have a challenging dog behavior you need help with?
The Dish on Dogs is your source for all your canine questions.
Improve your relationship with your dog and deepen your understanding of your furry friend. Right here on the Dish on Dogs. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dish on Dogs. I'm your host, Mike Gould, mayor of Houndstown, USA, home to the happiest dogs on earth. Houndstown is a fully interactive daycare for dog environment where packs of dogs, literally thousands that come a day, and they interact with other dogs without the involvement of humans. And that's really what a dog needs more than anything. They need that dog time. Just like children need children time, dogs need dog time. And we provide this. And frankly, I don't know of any other place. We don't breed discriminate. We put dogs by personality, size, and temperament in packs. Why, you ask? Because they're pack animals. So that's why we do it. So we provide them what most humans don't, but what Mother Nature requires of pack animals. Fish need water, birds need to fly, etc. So in this episode, oh, and of course I'm here by the lovely.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
Thanks for that.
Jackie Bondanza. You know her, you love her. She's smart.
But you're really the star of the show. Come on.
No, I'm not.
I'm just your sidekick. Okay, I'm just here to keep your time.
Let's just say that. Okay, sure. So,
all right, this episode, what are we doing?
I think it's important because we're coming, I hope, out of COVID. It's been a year right now or so. I don't know how long it's been, but we should be coming out of COVID. And I forgot. What do you want to talk about?
See, this is why you need me. We were going to talk about dog adoptions and the fact that, you know, in a very positive light, all the shelters basically were emptied out in almost everywhere in the country because the thing to do during the quarantine was to adopt a dog.
Right.
Now, 4, 5, 6, 7 months later, we're actually seeing a lot of those dogs head back to the shelter for a lot of different reasons. So we want to focus today's episode on talking about how can you prevent that, ways that you can help your dog acclimate to your environment and keep your dog in your home, because at the end of the day, getting a dog is a huge responsibility financially, emotionally.
Right.
So let's talk about that.
Okay, so let's start this way. I always like to talk about what humans do and what dogs don't do. What humans, they can process emotions and so forth. So we have to acknowledge, Jackie, we are human. Would you agree with that? Yes? Okay. So being human, what's part of our psyche is altruism. So we like to talk about, we're always doing things to save the animals, save the whales, save the trees. Many times, and that's a good thing. But we're not always doing it the way it seems to be. So for example, everybody ran out and adopted dogs. Great. And we're the same way. We rescue dogs all the time. But really, if you really be honest we're doing it for ourselves. We're selecting certain dogs at a certain time. So that's altruism, plain and simple. It's for us, not for necessarily the dog. If we were just purely rescuing dogs for the good of dogs, we'd probably have 100 dogs, and we would just so it's a selfish type of thing most time. People buy dogs, adopt dogs, or rescue dogs. But anyway, altruism. So again, we're doing it somewhat selfishly, and that's a good thing. But without thinking of the consequences, like you said, Jackie, there's a huge dogs. Hey, news alert: dogs bite. They have teeth. They get sick. They require medical care. So there's a whole bunch of expenses to it. I can't tell you the number of times that dogs come to Houndstown and they get a cold or something, an illness, right? That happens. Just like kids in school, where you go to Disney World, you can get an illness. I can't tell you how many humans are kind of surprised by that. They're like shocked.
Despite the fact that we educate all of our customers about this.
Right.
We do obviously our very best. But yeah, that's the nature of a living creature, whether it's a human or a dog, a cat, a horse, anything.
Right, a human. But it's best to relate it to humans because we're human. So when a kid goes to kindergarten, you're not shocked if they get a cold or a flu or an eye infection or an ear infection. We accept that, and what do? We take them to the doctor and we pay for the service. But with dogs, somehow, people don't realize the expense of it.
Well, I think there's unrealistic expectations when it comes to dogs. We adopt them and assume that they're going to acclimate quickly to our home, our children, all the people coming over, guests. Right. They're not going to poop or pee in the house. They're not going to bark outside the window. They're going to walk really nicely on a leash. They're not going to bite anybody. Right. And then they're never going to get sick. They're never going to get injured. So I don't know why there's a set of unrealistic expectations. Right. I think there's a romantic aspect, romanticize this idea of adopting dogs, but the reality is quite different. And we see that sometimes in our business where a dog comes for daycare or boarding, and they can catch kennel cough or a respiratory illness. They can get a puncture wound from playing. So there has to be a level of understanding on the part of the customer that is what can and will happen, right. To any, right. like I said, any living creature.
Right.
So
well, that's just general to pet owners. It's not specific to Houndstown. Dogs at the dog park, they're going to get her. They can pull a muscle. That's what happens. It happens actually very infrequently compared to humans. I mean, dogs are very. It does.
They're very resilient. Yeah.
They're very sure-footed. So yeah, they can jump and do all these amazing things that most people couldn't.
So I think when it comes to expectations, I think what a lot of people don't understand is that, especially if you adopt a dog. And you don't know that dog's history or what their past behavior issues might have been, the reason they're in the shelter, you have to expect that there's going to be a pretty long period of time that you're going to have to allow the dog to get acclimated. Right. So when you add in COVID to this, we've talked about before, in the winter, dogs hibernate, right? So if you adopt a dog in September and then you head into 5-6 months of winter and that dog hasn't been properly exposed and you've had him in the house, he might have had that time to get used to you and your family, but now you're opening up a whole new world for him, and he needs even more time to kind of understand the world.
Right. So the 2 points you brought up that are very accurate. So it's human impulsivity. In March of 2020, the world was upside down. We already know that dogs bring us great joy just by virtue of being a dog, just by petting them. Their tail wags, they're loyal, they have all of these wonderful traits. So it was quite natural to run out. We're not going anywhere. We're locked in our house. Let's go to a shelter. Shelters were actually delivering dogs to people's houses. They were working through it. So what we always talk about, both in the human and mammalian dog brain, there is always an adjustment period for everything. And we call it a honeymoon phase. You know that with house guests, and dogs especially, they come to the house. First day, they don't know where they are. They don't know where the dog food is. They don't know who you are. They don't know who your kids are. So they're just on this kind of judgment honeymoon phase to see where do they fit in this pack. And they look around. So maybe the 5-year-old will drop a hot dog on the floor. So he's got that relationship forms with the 5-year-old. The husband may come and go, and he has his own sense of behavior. Mom maybe is providing all the meals. So whatever roles people have, they're all different. And dogs only can look, see, and make those little quick judgments. Who's who, who's going to help me, who's going to hurt me. And once they get comfortable, just like a house guest, they start to take advantage of that, right? So you have a house guest for a week, they're very polite. 2 weeks later, they want the keys to your car. Then they're in your underwear drawer. It never ends.
What kind of house guest do you have?
Well, that's when I'm a house guest.
Right. Note to self.
No, but here it is. They cross boundaries. So dogs need boundaries. Once you allow them, so the first day they come into your house, I guarantee you, they're not going to jump on your bed because they don't know what a bed is. Right. They're not going to jump on your couch because it doesn't make sense to them. But a week later, you sit on the couch and you encourage them up, they're going to be up. And this process, and it's not quite as long as you're talking about, the process of this honeymoon phase happens quickly because dogs aren't thinking of anything else. They're not thinking about COVID. They're just in this new environment, and they want to know, if you don't show them what boundaries are, they're going to cross the boundaries, just like children, right? How many times you say, a kid say, oh, he was so polite at my house, he's such a good kid. And I'm like, are you sure you're talking about my kids? Because they're brats. But situationally, they understand the boundaries, and they're on that honeymoon phase.
And that's one of the reasons too why dogs behave differently in the home than they do when they come to a Houndstown location.
Definitely.
Right? So it's like kids going to school, they behave at school, but they won't behave at home. So the point is, you have to have a plan. If you adopt a dog, you have to have a plan. You have to have a financial plan. You have to have a time commitment plan. You have to be on. You have to plan with every member of your household so that you're all on the same page about how you're going to treat the dog, how you're going to react to the dog's behavior, how are you going to set boundaries in the home. It's a big deal to bring an animal into your house. And like you said, it's not, of course, we want to do that to make ourselves feel better and our kids feel better. But you have to take the dog into consideration first. Really, you're changing the dog's whole world. And the dog deserves time and consideration to make that happen.
Right. But the story has already been told, unfortunately, because it was such a wonderful story last year. The shelters were empty. Well, guess what? I get calls every day. The dog's got, if we don't mitigate a problem, the dog's going back to the shelter. The other important point, we love rescuing dogs. That's all we do. But you have to understand, the dogs are in a shelter for a reason. Number one, they're mostly adult dogs, right? Or adolescent dogs. There's not a lot of puppies. Puppies get adopted. Puppies get sold. This happens very quickly. But the dogs that are in a shelter, not always, but there's the backstory. Just the original owner let the dog cross boundaries. So the dog you return to the shelter today because he crossed boundaries in your house, the cycle, it's a never-ending cycle. And this is what Jackie and I and Houndstown charities deal with all the time, this continual cycle. The dogs get adopted, they go home, they're on that honeymoon phase for 2 or 3 weeks, then they start the old behaviors that they had come back, they go back to the shelter. And we just have dogs forever. They're going out. And this is not, you ask any shelter director, this is their biggest...
Right. It's not new. It's just the volume in which this occurred over the past year is significantly higher. So, we try to help people manage their dogs so that their dogs can stay in the home. The dog deserves to be in the home. And sometimes, we have to sacrifice. We have to sacrifice financially. We have to sacrifice sometimes other time commitments. There are things we need to do and plan for.
Right. But stick with the simple stuff. Leadership, consistency, and boundaries. That's all it is. This is not difficult. You don't need a dog trainer. The things that you have to do to set that boundary, and instead of letting the dog jump on the couch, how about you get on your butt, have your popcorn, and sit on the ground with the dog while you're watching TV? That sounds it's so simple to me, yet we put conflict in the dog by inviting him up on the couch, and then you don't want him on the couch.
Yeah. So I think, setting boundaries for us, that means using a crate or a place to teach a dog to go place. That really helps keep the dog safe. It's like the equivalent of a bedroom for us humans, like you always say. So using that and not allowing the dog to free roam in the home is huge. And be patient. Don't set boundaries. Set boundaries. And it's never too late to teach an old dog new tricks.
No, we do it all the time.
So people will often ask, I adopted a 7-year-old dog. How can is he trainable? The answer is always yes, and it can be done extremely quickly. So this does not take 6 consecutive lessons with a dog trainer. A lot of times people will use a dog trainer and then, pay $400 for lessons for 10 weeks, and then the dog is back to his old ways.
Right. Even if they got anywhere, a lot. Yeah, absolutely. So it's the consistency of it and the simplicity of it, because dogs, again, aren't thinking about a lot of things. So it's just boundaries and consistency. Teach the dog what is the expectation of when something happens. When the doorbell rings, which they don't know what a doorbell is, but we go running to the front door and they join us in hysterics. What do you really want them to do? What you want them to do is not get overly aroused, and you just want them to ignore the door and go lay down on a bed somewhere. This is so simple to teach. It's probably the simplest behavior, but most people just don't get it. If you go to our YouTube channel, and there's example after example after example of how to balance dogs' energy without, and it's very difficult because we're too damn smart as humans.
Right. And I think if you can balance your dog's energy, you're going to help essentially save his life. If you're considering returning a dog to the shelter because you feel like he's unmanageable, there are ways to make the dog manageable in your home, period. And it starts with you. It starts with your family, and it starts with how you react to a dog's behavior in the home. Like you said, a dog has to be taught first what the expectations are before he can be expected to meet those expectations.
Yes. Jackie, I think you hit the nail on the head as always. On our next episode, can we just talk about a continuation of this conversation and talk about companion animals, domesticated animals? I really think that that's an interesting topic. How and why dogs are in our homes and there's no pigs or horses inside our home. I'd like to know that.
Well, some people have pigs nowadays.
But the truth, again, anthropomorphic, those pigs end up in the frying pan because they cannot be properly social. Okay, some of you...
Well, pigs don't belong in homes, period. I mean, that's just...
Well, there's an argument dogs don't either, but we'll save that for our next episode. And we're going to wrap this up.
All right. Watch us every Monday night at 8 o'clock. You can find us on The Dish on Dogs on Facebook. You can also find us on The Dish on Dogs on our YouTube channel and on iTunes, Spotify, and all your other podcast platforms. It seems like you have something else to say.
Just my normal goodbye to Joan and Tom Sullivan. I changed my view. Tom Sullivan is one of the smartest people in the universe.
He actually really is.
He really is. It doesn't appear that way when you first meet him, but he knows about real estate, chiropractic medicine. He's a genius, and his mom raised him. So I usually talk about him as the dummy of the family, but he's really not. Then we'll go back to our friends, the Fitzgeralds, Joe and Kathleen.
Okay.
We're adding you to our list of goodbyes. See you next week.
We'll see you next week.